gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's October the 3rd, 2022. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, getting ready to discuss the news of the day, presented as always by LifeWallet, where the time is now to take charge of your personal health. And this is our first Good Morning CaneSport show in the month of October, so I thought we would do it a little bit differently today. And one of the main stories on our website this morning is a look at the 2023 recruiting class and where it stands here as we go into October. And it's getting close, Canes fans. These weeks are going by really fast. You got October, November, 3 weeks in December, and the large portion of this 2023 recruiting class will be signing at that point. And the amazing thing is we're only like a little more than 3 months away from a lot of these kids being on campus and being part of the solution moving forward for Mario Cristobal at some of these positions. So I thought today we would do something special and bring Larry Blustein, the guru of South Florida recruiting, high school sports and high school football, onto the show today, just to talk a little bit about how Miami is doing in recruiting, how Miami is doing locally in particular, and what the next few months might look like. So Larry, welcome back to CaneSport.com, and happy to have you. And so we're into October now. Man, this thing has flown by fast, these first few weeks of the high school football season. I know you've been out at a lot of games, and I thought I'd start with where Miami stands coming off that Middle Tennessee State loss. And you had a 9-month build-up for Mario Cristobal, recruiting like maniacs. They weren't probably doing as well in South Florida as they would want to. I mean, I'm sure that they were hoping that this groundswell of excitement would lead to a little bit of an easier time recruiting the top players in the area. They are having to battle it out like there's no tomorrow. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is, before we get into specific kids, is in general, how big of a setback do you think that loss last week was in terms of recruiting locally?
Not much. I think Miami, what Mario Cristobal sold, Gary, is the future, not the present. And
Right.
That's what these kids, for them, what's going on now is fine, but it's not what they're about, because they're still in high school. They're not wearing a University of Miami uniform. So, and a lot of the guys that I talked to figured that they're the remedy. And, to me, you're a receiver that they're signing, or perhaps a linebacker, and you say, wait a minute, I come in next year as a true freshman and I'm playing. And playing at a Power 5 school, at a program that's on the way back up. You know what? You just can't judge on what's going on this year on what Mario Cristobal and the staff are about. They pretty much inherited a bunch of players that weren't theirs. So, and not to say that they wouldn't have offered these guys scholarships, but you could just see, you look at Oregon, you look at some of the kids that left Oregon. Those are the type of players that Miami's going to be getting. This class that you had mentioned, the 23 class that's coming up, is a reflection of what this staff and what Mario Cristobal is about. So to answer your question, and being truthful and having an opportunity to talk to kids and being on the sideline of the games, and asking the guys like a Robbie Washington, or or somebody like a Nathaniel Joseph, what he thinks about losing to Middle Tennessee State. It affects them because of the fact that they're committed there. But at the same time, they understand that what they're getting recruited as is to be the remedy for the problem that's gone on for all these years.
Yeah, we've spoken to the majority of them, and that's the feedback that we're getting. The kids like Nathaniel Joseph that are committed, they seem like they are solidly committed. Like they know they are going there to be part of the solution to what has ailed Miami for so many years. But I got to tell you, Larry, I mean, I've been, I understand that a big part of that solution has to be the elite kids from South Florida buying into exactly what we have just talked about.
Right.
You guys if you guys would just stick together, this can happen very fast. If you're not sticking together, and the Canes got to go out across America and recruit to the level they want to recruit, it can be done. I mean, Mario Cristobal's done it. He's done it at Oregon. He will do it here. But it would be a lot more seamless. It would happen a lot quicker if some of these top kids were, I use the word cooperating a little bit. And you look at this year's recruiting cycle, Larry, and I'm looking at, Brandon Innes. I'm looking at Hakeem Williams. I'm looking at Jaylen Brown for starters. Ruben Bain would be another one. That's 4 pretty darn good prospects right there that Miami is like battling for their life to try to get to come. Now, I think, 1 or 2 of them at least will eventually end up at Miami, but they're having to invest a lot of effort and time, Larry, in these South Florida elite players. Your thoughts on that, and maybe why?
Well, first of all, Gary, you go back into the 80s and you remember when Miami was beating people, and into the 90s and the early 2000s. Marvin Jones, Steve Everett, Derek Thomas, all these studs that left. You can't get everybody, but back in the day, Miami would hold on to those, the Randy Shannons and the Darren Smiths and players that were local. But if you look back, and I get a chance to, because I keep a lot of that stuff, to look at their roster, in every class, if they got 4 or 5 kids from the South Florida area, it was good, because during the cycle, that's 20 players out of a roster of 85 to 90. So that's not so bad. And that's what Miami's trying to get back to. You got to remember that Mario was a part of those classes. And he understands that you don't have to pretty much take everybody, but you got to take some of the kids. And I think that's what they've done so far. Getting a Wesley Bassint last year, bringing a couple of kids in. You're right. They got to pick it up a little bit more locally. But if you get a Ruben Bain, and who else? I mean, Ennis is committed right now to Ohio State. Mark Fletcher to Ohio State. Kind of tough to get them. Hakeem just committed to FSU. I don't think really I think he became less of a priority towards Miami, because there's other guys out there. And to me, when you have, you mentioned a Brown, there's a kid right there that everybody kind of thought that he would gravitate towards Miami. It may not be a done deal right now, but there's still other targets out there locally. And, it's maybe not the deepest of deep classes, the 23. The 24 picks it up a little bit more with the kids over at Chaminade and a couple of kids over at Northwestern and such. So, I think, too, you got to look at the depth of the class, and do these guys that, you mentioned, if some of these guys, do they take Miami over the top? Are they better than what they have now? And in some cases, no, they're not. And that's the thing. Miami's got to get better people than they've been recruiting. And if you're just getting the same type of guys just to get South Florida guys, you're just going to fall into that, kind of a hole. So to answer your question, I think Miami's going to pick it up. I think that winning and losing is not going to make a difference to the kids that are going to be playing at 23, 24, and 25. So I think they're doing okay. I mean, they're in there with a lot of the people, but like I said, they got to strike gold with Ruben Bain, which I think they can. Obviously, he's going to get Alabama and all these big time schools, but he also has to remember that when he gets in there, it's going to be a little bit of a pecking order. And there's 2-3 Ruben Bains that they're recruiting. They're not just getting one guy. Miami, in this growth process, you get a Brandon Innes on campus, and he's a day one starter because he's that good, but he's not going against the competition who are his mirror image at schools like Alabama or schools like Georgia or Ohio State. So I think they're going to have to do a pretty good job at flipping these kids. And to me, it shouldn't be a hard sell to understand that here's the direction we're going. We have this guy, we have that guy, we have, really good coaching. And it's kind of a can't miss thing for Miami, because I think their coaching alone and their ability to get their own kids in there are going to add up to something positive. but I think people are making way too much of what they haven't recruited rather than what they're going to get. And I think they've got an opportunity because a lot of kids want to stay home. You know what? I mean, the comments that Tyler Van Dyke made, about, oh, the crowd's not this and that. Who cares? You know what? The crowd's not going to get you to the next level. The crowd's not going to win you games. I don't care what they say about 12th man. Or you just go out there and play your football. And Miami's always got an attractive schedule. They're always going to play top flight teams. You look at the ACC now, which is improving all the time. You look at schools like Syracuse, which is getting better and better every year because they're going after kids from the Northeast like they used to. And you get teams like NC State and Clemson. Miami's in good shape, Gary. I really do. I believe that this class coming in, so you take a couple of kids, from outside the area, which they're going to do, but that elevates your program, and it shouldn't matter to a kid from Coral Gables if they're getting a kid from state of Washington. I mean, if it's going to elevate the program that you're part of, and that's why you do it. I mean, and you ask any kid right now, you look at Alabama's roster, they got like 5 kids from Birmingham and 4 kids. And so it really doesn't matter. It's just what happens is you got to get the kids, that the top flight kids. And so far, if you look down that 2023 class, they got some dudes. I mean, and these guys are, as they mature, are going to be better and better. And you're not going to have the ceilings lower right now, but it's going to be really high. And, any name that you mention off of that next class is somebody that's got a potential, to go through the roof. And that's why Miami took so much time in courting them and trying to recruit them.
I think it has to be noted, Miami's as competitive as anybody in the country in NIL. And
yeah.
I think that's going to stand them in good stead in December, Larry. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of schools right now, and you hear a lot behind the scenes. There's a lot of promises being made, but December is going to be gut check time, and
Sure.
And people are going to have the money to fulfill the promises they're making, and I think there's going to be a lot of movement in December in multiple directions, and obviously schools are going to have battles to keep their current commits, and I think that they're going to be battling for other people's commits, and there could be a lot of movement in December, but. So today we take a look at the 2023 recruiting class, and I thought since we were able to have Larry on the show that we would take a few minutes, go position by position, and talk a little bit about where Miami's at and with some of these kids and what Larry thinks. And Larry, let's start at quarterback, and Jaden Rashada, Emory Williams being the in-state kid. There's been a lot of. Let's start with Rashada. So much debate. I mean, his stock was so high, and he had a so-so Elite 11, and people started trying to poo-poo his commitment to Miami a little bit. Every time I turn on the tape, I'm watching this guy play at a pretty high level, Larry. Your thoughts on Jaden Rashada?
Well, first of all, people don't want to give Miami credit for anything, so you got to kind of
right.
you got to kind of put that behind. Rashada's a big time kid. I mean, he's just, you got to remember somebody like Tyler Van Dyke wasn't so highly coveted. He came in and kind of established himself with some really good receivers and guys making plays. He's a stud. I mean, he's going to come in. He's going to compete for playing time. He comes in as a freshman, and he and Jake and Jakuri are going to battle it out like really good programs. You see that Bryce Young goes down at Alabama, and they just insert a guy that runs like a 4.25. So that's what Miami's going to get to. You got to have talent. You got to be competitive. Jaden Rashada makes all the throws, like you said. I love him. I mean, there's nothing not to like about him. He's imagine if they're picking him apart, what they're doing to Manning. I mean, a guy that's really got a lot of ifs, ands, and a guy who never really performs very well against top flight competition. So if anybody's should get picked apart, it would be Arch Manning, and not so much Jaden Rashada. But I like him. I think he just goes into that very talented quarterback room and only gets better. Works with Ponce, works with hopefully some really good receivers. But he's a big time guy. Emory, on the other hand, is a work in progress. I get a chance to I saw him early on. sophomore, junior year when he was at Tallahassee in a camp, and he made all the throws. He's just got to get it, and it's got to translate to the field. It hasn't so far. I talked to Ty Wise a lot, former University of Miami starting center, who Miami needs to get on his kid. Freshman, 6'5", 275-pounder, probably one of the best offensive linemen in the nation. And but he's at Pace High School.
Larry?
At Pace High School in the Panhandle, right near Pensacola. And Ty and I talk about Emory because they played Milton. And, he said what he needs to do is you just got to work on becoming a better player, more of a team type of player, and not, understand that what happens in 7-on-7s and little camps and combines doesn't always translate to the football field unless you work hard. And there's a guy who probably wants Miami to do as well as anybody. So he was being real with it. And with a Jaden Rashada, you got a kid who's ready for college, ready to go. With Emory, you got a guy who's got some size and he throws the ball real well, but he's got a lot to learn about reading defenses. And that's why, you get in that room for a year with Frank and some of the other quarterbacks and learn a little bit from Jake and see what Jacurri's learned, because remember, Jacurri's a stud too, and people don't realize it. I mean, there's a guy when he was a junior, picked apart Miami Northwestern when he was at Lowndes County, and everybody raved about him, what he could do. So that room gets really, really good. The guys who are going to survive are the ones that are going to work hard. And that's basically what the quarterback position is that's coming in. You have a guy who's established versus a guy who's trying to establish himself.
So far, it looks like Rashada and Williams are both sticking.
Yeah.
You're going to have to sweat out, I think, Emory Williams all the way to the end for obvious reasons. It's looking like Tyler Van Dyke might not have this seamless exit to the NFL draft after this season, Larry. And I wonder how that impacts the whole quarterback room and picture here at Miami.
Here's the deal. Okay. And he's probably going to come back because he really hasn't established it. I mean, it was sort of the Brad Kaya thing that after he left his junior year, oh my God, he's going to be the second pick in the NFL draft. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. You have to kind of like prove yourself over and over again. And last year, you make no bones about it. Guys like Harley and guys like Rambo made him in a lot of the games, making great catches, being able to get open, advancing the ball, and moving the stick. So what happens is Tyler Van Dyke will be put right into the mix with everybody else. He's not going to be handed a job. Everybody in that room is going to have to, show what they could do. And if he's disgruntled or doesn't like what's going on, he'll move on. And but to think he's going to be one of the top NFL picks is absurd right now, because he just hasn't been able to
showcase himself. They don't have the
and the only way you showcase yourself is in adversity. And if NFL coaches are saying, wow, look at what he's doing, and these guys at receiver are average at best, Miami just can't get guys. And in the Middle Tennessee State game, he was awful. I mean, and that was all on him. Now, in the Texas A&M game, he had a lot of passes dropped that could have equaled a touchdown. So that kind of puts something in the NFL scout's head. But then he comes back against Middle Tennessee, and he's way behind on throws. He's missing everything, wide open guys. And he didn't even give those guys a chance to drop. So, yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. He's going to, and they owe it to Jake, to give him an opportunity, to definitely be in the mix, and he's earned it. So, and same thing with Jacurri. So I think what's going to happen if he comes back next year, that they're all going to be put in spring, and they're all going to have to battle their butts all the way to opening day, and a better quarterback will win. Because, when people say to me, oh, well, this guy and that guy, I said, you think that Mario Cristobal wants to sabotage his team? You think he just wants to start a guy just to start a guy? He's going to start the best person for the job. Because remember, as media yourself, you don't get a chance to see entire practices. Nobody does. So you only go on, what people will tell you, people within the program. But you got to remember that they're trying to be the best they can be. And whoever emerges in that position, or any position for that matter, but in that position, you can almost 100% guarantee they're not handing the ball to anybody. Now, they kind of probably went in the favor of Tyler this year to start the year out. He had a really good year, and obviously, but think about this. If Jake wasn't hurt last year, Jake might have gotten that same opportunity. and he may have been blown up as much as, and he may have even blown up more because physically coming out of high school, he's a better quarterback.
They would have platooned the whole year, I think.
Yeah.
If Jake doesn't get hurt.
Exactly. No doubt. I mean, but now you're in a situation, and you mentioned, I think that Jaden Rashada will be thrown in there because of his athletic ability. Emery's still, Emery's like in the Peyton Matocha kind of realm that he's going to have to prove himself to get any time on the field. And that's the way it is. I mean, sure, somebody like an Emory Williams could go to Southern Mississippi or South Alabama and maybe be, the guy, but welcome to Power 5 football, where you're going to have to, starting this week, everybody's going to have to turn up the volume quite a bit, because North Carolina is the second leading scoring team in the ACC. And you know what? I mean, and if Miami gets 40-something points put on them against Middle Tennessee State and 400-something yards, North Carolina's got a lot better players. So that's the thing. Everything's going to be a competition. And I fully 100% believe that this coaching staff understands that, and they're not awarding anybody a position without them winning it.
What's exciting though is and I know everyone's frustrated right now. They just lost to Middle Tennessee State, but you're really 3 months away from having the opportunity to solve this problem.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids are going to be early entries. They're going to be on campus in January, and you have a chance to go out and recruit 4, 5, 6 top shelf receivers that can totally transform the whole offensive side of the organization.
No doubt.
Like that.
No doubt. The running back room is already deep. Remember, you have two really, really, really good guys that aren't playing right now. I mean, You have a freshman who is as heralded as anybody coming in, and then you have Chaney, who is a really good running back. He's athletic.
Never stay healthy.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, so to me, I'm not worried about the running room. I think that the offensive line with the emergence of some of the guys that they brought in, plus, as you said, in 3 months, I mean, you're looking at Francis Mauigoa, who I think is a stud. He's another Evan Neal type of player. He's, an aggressive guy. He could play either tackle or guard. So that's what you're doing. You're getting high-level guys that the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States usually recruit, and Miami's getting them now, and that's the problem. You look at like on the defensive side with Leonard Taylor. Well, when Miami got him, they were so excited, but they only got one. See, everybody else in the mix for national titles getting 2 and 3 or maybe even 4 of those guys. So that's why when Georgia, who pretty much had everybody but the water people drafted in the NFL, could come back and still be pretty darn good. Yeah, they almost lost to Missouri, but you know what? That happens. Even when Miami was killing people, they almost lost to East Carolina or Mississippi State. It happens. But I will tell you this, everything's going to be competition now. No one's going to be handed any job just because they're this or they're that. And that's Mario Cristobal. Learning under awesome people like Nick Saban as far as coaching and Greg Schiano and having a chance to, watch Jimmy Johnson and watch Dennis Erickson and people who know about coaching. And that's what he's become. He's probably a reflection of everybody who he's played for or coached with along the line. And that's why you bring in a guy like Frank Ponce, who you work with at FIU, because you know what he's capable of. And, a Charlie Strong, because you know what his objective, and a Steele, who you know what he's going to do. And Gaddis, to me, I think that everybody is jumped ahead 2 years. And, to me, I would say shame on Jimbo Fisher. He's had 5 years there, and that team is just average at best. So to me, you give Mario Cristobal 5 years in those recruiting classes, he'll by far exceed any of those teams.
Now, I'm going to jump over to the running backs because you just talked about it a little bit, and I got to be honest with you. I think they need to get better at running back. I've been disappointed in Rooster. Rooster had a chance at Texas A&M to be a difference in that game. And, he had one running play where he just did not make a sharp enough cut, and it should have been a walk-in touchdown. And he ended up getting tackled by the shoelaces. Right. And it seems to me like he gets tackled a lot by the shoelaces. And obviously he's a serviceable player, but this really, to me, Larry, needed to be the year that Rooster really busted out. I just haven't seen that yet. Now he's nicked up again a little bit. We'll see how that progressives here, but I think they need to get better at running back. And Chaney's hurt all the time. We'll see how Citizen comes back, but I think they need a few Citizens, and they also need to get back to speed. And Christopher Johnson from Fort Lauderdale Dillard is a guy that they're looking at in that regard, Larry. And it looked for a while like he was going to commit to Miami. Then he started like romancing with Ole Miss a little bit, and it seems like it's gotten a little bit more complicated. Are you hearing anything out there behind the scenes on Christopher Johnson?
Well, as far as a player, and here's somebody who was last year just a fast kid. He's a national sprint champion, just to put into perspective. So it doesn't matter who he plays against. He gets out in the open. There's nobody in this free world that'll catch him other than maybe Usain Bolt. I mean, the kid is a 10.15, 100-meter kid. He's a 4.37 40. But the one good thing is he's worked with former Monsignor Pace running back Jerry Seymour, who Jerry was an excellent back. He knows a lot about the position, and he's taught him a lot of things. I think that's where his stock started to rise, because a lot of these people outside of South Florida, like Ole Miss or some of these other schools, are saying, wait a minute, the kid's not only, an amazing sprinter when he gets out in the open, but now he's got a little shake to him, and he's got some moves, and he's using vision. And that's the one thing that's going to keep him in that spotlight, for a lot of the good to great colleges to be on him. Miami just Kevin Smith needs to kind of keep the hard press on him. And, and I think that if they could land him, he's one of those guys that you're talking about. He's a marquee guy because he's learning more and more, Gary. And if he gets an opportunity, you get him out of the backfield. There's not a linebacker or safety in this world that'll stay with him. So, he reminds me a lot of Lamar Miller. And listen, Lamar Miller went on and had a nice little career when he stayed, healthy at the next level. Faster, obviously, but Lamar was pretty quick. But the thing is what he does is he poses now an opportunity to be a line of scrimmage runner, but also get out of the backfield. And just to bring up your point about Miami getting better at running back, the scheme that they've been running, and you look at and sitting there at the game against Middle Tennessee State, because of the lack of upfield passing, there are 8 guys that start in the box and 2 of them walk up. So you have 10 guys in the box when Miami runs the ball.
They're not scared. They're not scared of anybody.
It's impossible to ever get anything going. So I think, to your point, they got to get better, but also they've also got to develop balance in their offense for things to work as in their running game. So look last year, the reason why Rooster and some of the other guys that are, did so well is because they had their 6-man front, and then they had their 3 linebackers. They didn't have 8 and 9 guys in the box because Tyler Van Dyke would have killed them with Harley up the middle. So that has a lot to play with it. I still think that Rooster's a really good back. I think that Parrish is well, but they've got to utilize what's his name? Thad Franklin, because inside the 20, Thad's his calling is a Big Ten back. He could be at Wisconsin or Michigan State because he's a downhill type of guy. So when you get him inside the 20, you take the little backs out and just let him pound into the linebackers, because at the fourth quarter, those guys will be so worn down. I just think that that's a problem now. So if they're going to stack the box, you don't run 150, 170-pound guys, into the middle, because you're going to get eaten up all the time. And the chances of them breaking the line of scrimmage and getting out and doing it are basically none, because you have your front 5, and then you have your middle and your outside linebackers walking up, and your safeties coming up. So where are you going to go? And that's why
and they're going to get beat up.
The only way you remedy that is by backing everybody up, and the only way you could back anybody up is get a vertical passing game, and they haven't had it. How many times have they really gone deep? And I hate to say it, and I love Will Mallory to death, but he just is underachieving big time, because a guy with that frame, with that speed, with that athletic ability should be crushing people. He should be targeted 7-8 times a game. He should be catching 5.
They haven't been going to him enough.
But you know what? Because he drops balls, his concentration level, his confidence has gone down. Arroyo is a much better all-around tight end right now, and he shouldn't be because he doesn't have the physical tools that Will Mallory has. He's not 6'5", which you look at like Kelsey or some of those guys at the next level. Even Rob Gesicki or the kid Mike Gesicki from the Dolphins. That's the type of guy that a tight end who's a tall guy can make it. And I think I cringe when they line him up wide, because why do you want a corner on him when you're going to get safety up top or a linebacker or outside linebacker trying to stay with him, which is impossible. A corner is going to muscle up. A real good corner nowadays will reduce that 6'5" to a 5'11" because they'll body him up. They know how to cover. So to me, he's almost a waste going out wide. I can understand why they do it, because they're looking for something. And I understand that. But to me, they take away. But yeah, and I think that's going to be remedied in a major way. They got 3 tight ends coming in. I'll tell you what. I've watched all of them over and over again. They may have the strongest tight end. This is like a class that Iowa would get, because Iowa gets those type of guys, and they usually have 2 guys drafted in the first round that are tight end. But that, just to move off of the running back situation, I think the running back situation will iron itself out when you start adding some upfield passing game.
Well, they got to get Chris Johnson. That kind of speed is what they're missing. That would be huge. They're trying hard to flip Mark Fletcher, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Yeah. And they've been expanding the board. Roderick Robinson, who's a UCLA commit. Yeah. We won't really talk too much about that right now. Another kid by the name of Kyron Jones. But there is one that I did want to ask you about, Larry, and that's Jamari Ford from Miami Northwestern. He's a smallish guy. But he can be a weapon on special teams. Your thoughts on Jamari Ford?
Well, I love Jamari, and if he's 5'10", he's a whole different story. But he's not. He's 5'6", 5'7", and not to say that can't happen. Darren Sproles made it, but the chances of and Lionel James back in the day with Auburn. But you go to him if you can't land those marquee kids, and take nothing away from him. He's a great football player, but he's a great football player at the high school level. And I think he would be better suited, at the next level to get more playing time at FAU, FIU type of schools, right, to be honest with you. I mean, he's going to go to a Power 5 school, and he won't, he just isn't a great fit. It's almost a gimmick, and Miami's not in that position to have gimmicks. They need to have real, like you said, guys of Chris Johnson's caliber. I mean,
can't waste scholarships anymore.
Yeah. It's just,
and Mario
right now, no, I understand. And that's what I'm trying to say. But that's it's a good name to bring up, and I like him a lot, and he's a good dude, and he's worked hard, and I know the family real well, but he's not Miami's solution right now. If Miami had all these backs, and we're saying, wow, they're so low to that backfield, then you get a guy like Jamari, and he could be that guy that could come in there and, as you said, be kick returner, or use him as on a just out of the backfield type of passing, wheel route type of things, jet sweeps, which you're going to use Robbie Washington for, which is really good because Robbie's a versatile guy. I know you didn't ask me yet, but I'll just
I was just getting ready to. So good job. You handled the transition.
but Robbie's the type of guy, Gary, that so athletic. I mean, he does so much. He can play on both sides of the ball, but he's the guy that you're going to have the kick returner. He's got great hands, so he'd be a good punt returner. I don't have to worry. And if he gets the ball and he gets a little bit of a crease, he could go. He's very athletic, like his dad was. Maybe not as good a line of scrimmage runner, but he's not going to be used like that. He's going to be a jet sweep type guy to filter out of the backfield, guy to go into the slot position. He's going to be versatile. And, we already know Nathaniel Joseph's got that. He's got that it factor where he's going to get into the game. And I don't care if he's smaller. This is a kid that will go outside and he'll play off coverage. He'll beat you right off coverage. And then, you can get the best ACC or anybody kind of corners who are, physical and you'll watch. He gets off the line as well as anybody. Same thing like Brandon Innes does, but Brandon is a bigger body than he would. But Ray is the type of guy, Gary, that you play because he can play anywhere. And then if you need a slot guy, or if you say, go in motion and, be that wide guy, because you're most likely, if you go in motion, especially if teams play that standard defense, he's not going to draw the best corner. See, if he's on the best side and that corner's there, that corner most likely stay, because he's going to, it's unless you've got a guy like Calvin Johnson, which a guy is that big, you got to go with him. But yeah, I think Miami's, with those two guys coming in, those are two guys that just immediately help you. They really do. They immediately help you because
do they take it to the next level, Larry? Do they take Miami back to the next level? Are they better than Michael Redding, Jacoby George, Romello Brinson?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they're better.
And those are two moves in the right direction. And obviously they're going to need more than two guys. They got to keep building. Hakeem Williams looks like he's gone. I don't think Miami will give up on Brandon Innes until the last minute. Larry, he could write his ticket here on NIL, and
he's a family-oriented guy, Gary. And his mom's great. Amy's great, and I had a chance to see her at the game, on Saturday, and we talked. And this is a kid. He's a really good kid. He's gonna be a 5-year varsity starter. He and Ray are going to be 5-year varsity starters. That says a lot at high level places. And that's important to me. I don't think even Ohio State realizes what they're getting in this kid. This kid could be a starting safety. He could be your punter. He could be a punt returner. He could be a kickoff guy. He could do anything he wants. And that's what I'm saying. There's not enough versatility on Miami right now where you could do that. These guys are working hard just to play one position. So that's what they need. They need that. But Ray's definitely, I think those two guys, you work as hard as you throw a net over both of them, make sure they never get out, because those are guys that, as you said, they raise the bar. A lot of those other kids that you mentioned are not raising the bar. They've had their chance too. See, that's the thing. If you have your chance, you shouldn't bitch and moan to anybody, because you've had that opportunity. And if you can't get it done, then next man up.
I'm expecting several of them to be in the transfer portal after this season.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think they can bring in enough new talent at receiver, and I think you're going to see Miami hit the portal. Obviously they're going to try to sign 4 or 5 guys in traditional recruiting, and this receiver situation that we've been talking about for so many months can fix itself very, very quickly. Brandon Innes is one I would keep an eye on. I think Miami will be all in on him in December. I don't get the Ohio State infatuation with all these South Florida receivers. Obviously, they got something going on down here, and probably have their own they probably have a South Florida collective.
Yeah,
honestly.
well, they've done pretty well over the years, and having Brian Hartline come to all your games is not terrible. He's a guy that's recruiting them really hard, and I can understand, because he probably sees a lot of himself, in him. Brian was a very functional football player at the NFL level. He's fast. He got off the blocks for the press real quick, but yeah. Yeah, but I think too that you have to look at what Miami's got on the line as tight ends, and all 3 of those guys. I've watched them all, and they just keep up a tradition. Now Miami, they got to be more productive. See, Arroyo is productive, but he drops some balls too. So that's one of these things. These guys got to understand that you may come out of high school as a 5-star or a big guy, but if you don't get it done to the next level, there's guys that want to play this game. And that's why Restrepo, where everybody's knocked him ever since he was 7 years old, too small, too slow, to this, every level he's gone to. The importance is he plays in the Texas A&M game, and Miami wins that game because he's 10 points. He's 7 to 10 points in every game. And that's what I'm saying. Who knows what happened in the Middle Tennessee game. So I just can't figure that out. I don't think anybody can, but they've had 2 weeks to do it. And but that's my point. you cannot look at that shiny automobile right now if it doesn't work. You go for what helps you, what puts puts W's on your thing, because that's all the kids are going to remember. Down the line, they go, "Oh wow, we were 9-2 or 9-3." So not
Right.
2-9, but yeah, they got to wake up, and the fans got to understand that. Just because I know that Mario Cristobal came in with a lot of bells and whistles and he hired all these people, but it's sort of like when you're a kid and you play with that Play-Doh, you could shape it into anything, but it's still Play-Doh. It's the same Play-Doh that you've had, basically. And that's what Miami has right now. And, a lot of those guys that were recruited by the previous regime are still on hand. I know they brought in a few guys, but as well as I do that you have to develop a chemistry over time, and it doesn't happen in 6 months.
Let's talk O-line for a minute here, Larry. Francis Magoa obviously speaks for himself.
Stud.
He's a total stud, one of the best in the country. Have you had a chance to watch Tommy Kinsler at all?
Yeah, I have.
And what are your thoughts on
I
him?
like him a lot. Very physical guy, hard worker, runs everywhere, which I love. I love out of a lineman that they don't walk and lumber. If he goes to the next station, he's running. He's got a good step to him. Versatile kid, could play a couple positions on the line if needed. Strong, he's quick. He knows what it is to get better. And I like him. He's a good kid, and he'll be a good teammate. And that's going to be important too, as well.
Have you been out to see Frankie Tinilau at all?
Yeah, I saw Frankie. Frankie's another guy, but remember, Frankie's still behind as far as his experience. So he's a big, strong kid who's played other sports, but American football is a whole different deal, and especially when you play the offensive line. Those are usually the toughest kids to judge coming out of high school. Because of the fact that they could be bigger and stronger. Sam Young was one of those guys when he was coming out of high school. And you say to yourself, wow, these 5'10", 190-pound defensive ends are getting into him. Well, that's because of the fact that it's tough for him, a guy 6'7", to bend down to 5'11" and look effective all the time. And you're never going to get that at the college level. You're always going to get a DN who's 6'4", and he'll be able to engage. I'll tell you what, Frankie's going to be a physical guy. He's going to give you everything he has. He's got a learning curve coming up, but that's what it's about. You take a freshman, and not every freshman is going to be able to walk in and say, hey, where's my locker? I'm playing. He's going to get in the mix because of his physical ability, and somewhere down the line, they're going to go, you know what? This kid's learned a lot. Let's get him in there. And that's what's going to happen. Frankie's like that.
I want to talk. I'm not going to ask you to comment on everybody, but I want to shift gears to Ruben Bain. This one has really baffled me. Ruben Bain could have been an anchor of this class, a guy that brings a lot of excitement with him as a commitment.
Right.
His brother's on the staff. Tolbert obviously played for the Canes. You could a million reasons why Ruben Bain should be a Miami Hurricane, could be a Miami Hurricane. Now, he's good enough to where the Alabamas of the world are recruiting him very hard as well. What do you think has kept Ruben Bain from jumping on board with Miami and being that difference-making type commitment that would propel other guys to become part of the class as well?
Well, I think you answered it. He's a guy that appeals to a lot of schools around the country. And before he signs on that dotted line, he wants to make sure that this is the best for him. It may be right now the best thing for Miami and the fans and everybody like that. But is it the best thing for Ruben Bain? And that's definitely what he's waiting on, to make sure it's going to be a fit for everybody, not just for the school, but it has to be a fit for him. How is he going to fit in? How is, what's going to be his future? And certainly, a lot of kids still look at that, being in the mix and being in the Final Four and, as a high water mark to be part of. And, that's part of society now. You always want to play for a winning team. And if he could, you see, the whole thing is, and remember talking to Mario when he first got here, he said, what we got to sell is the future. And he's right. And whether you or me or the media or the fans understand it, it's reality. That's what he's doing. He's taken over a program that was really bad. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, struggling to beat teams that they shouldn't even be in the games with. He remembers when they used to go up and beat West Virginia 56-7, and he remembers when they were beating Florida State in all these programs. And Florida State is a good measuring stick because they've used a combination of recruiting, really good coaching, and the portal to elevate them to a 4-1 start, and beating an LSU team that's pretty good. So Miami just needs to, take kids and explain to them, listen, you're going to be a part of this program. I mean, you're going to be a huge part, but you got to understand right now we're working with what we had in the past. We're all about the future. And that's the one thing you got to sell the future. And to me, if I'm an athlete coming out of high school and I'm thinking, well, Ohio State's always on TV and they got this guy and that guy, but Miami's got a new facility coming. Their schedule is crazy good. And I got a chance to play close to home. I'm thinking great education and have an opportunity to play with some really good guys, because a lot of these kids have made commitments over the last couple of years. Wesley Bassett could have gone anywhere in the nation, but he stayed here. You have a couple of guys like that. So I think that's what it's all about. And I said this at the top of the, of our interview, is that they're selling the future. They're not selling the present. You can't sell the present because it's not yours to sell. See, that's the thing. 2-3 years from now, it'll be all his. I mean, and it's funny because I look at, it's just like Oregon fans. I mean, they can't sell Bo Nix. He wasn't a recruit for for them, but he's doing pretty well as the guy came in. So yeah, that's and I believe that. And I've been around long enough where I understand the entire process. And if you come but it should be human nature. Even kids at 17 should understand, if you come into a situation that the people are selling the future, then obviously you can't look past. You can't look now. You got to look at what's going to happen the next year or so, when all the, if you believe in a Mario Cristobal or any, whoever on staff, you say, okay, well, they weren't here last year, but they're here now and they've always had success, and it looks like it's going to add up. And I want to be a part of that. Miami's always going to be listen, you give Miami an opportunity to get back in the national picture, and they're going to be news. I mean, they're going to be news. I mean, everybody, like everybody will even tell you, even, naysayers like Kirk Herbstreit will say when Miami's winning, everything's better. And that's a trip. That's a fact. It's people could say, oh, Miami's no. But when they were winning in the 80s and they were winning in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was all about the U. And then and everybody was getting in the spotlight. And no, they don't have to be Randall Hill swagger or anything like that. They could just be themselves and play good football, come out with W's. And that'll be the selling point, I think.
But how good is Ruben Bain?
He's the top of the line guy. He's like what Leonard Taylor was coming out of high school. Probably more so because he started since the 10th grade, and he was a stud back then too. And he's a key guy. He's a guy that, like I said, Alabama gets 2 and 3 of him. Georgia gets 2 and 3 of him. That's why when every year you go, oh, well, Alabama lost this guy, but Jesus, they got another guy who's equally as good. And, and that's how you get to the next level. You can't just strive for one guy. Right. You've got to get a room full of those guys, and that elevates the competition, and that gives you kind of a line of kids, for years to come. Gives you depth, and I think that's positive.
I know you get around the state quite a bit. A couple in-state key guys, very highly rated guys that Miami is fighting like tooth and nail for. Samuel Mbemba, the defensive end, and another defensive end, Damon Wilson.
Out of Venice. Well, Mbemba's a kid that I watched a year and a half ago. IMG guy, quick, strong, very athletic, confident. In fact, I watched them when I went over to IMG, and he actually was going up against Maui Goa, Francis, in a couple of plays. And then you look at a kid like Wilson, who just like part of Venice's state championship run last year. I mean, this kid's a big kid. He's quick. He's an agile guy. He's a difference maker. And but you got to understand, you've got to collectively put all these guys together, because if we've learned with Duke Johnson, you just can't get a 5-star like Duke Johnson and have a 1-star offensive line. You see, and if you remember when Miami and USC were on probation at the same time, USC went out and got 5-star linemen and 2-star running backs. Miami went out and got 5-star running backs and 2-star linemen or 1-star linemen. And that makes a difference, because if you get a offensive line that opens holes and does these things, that 2-star lineman looks pretty darn good, because he's got holes to get into. And but that's the one thing I look back at. Recruiting is everything, and it's probably enhanced itself now because of the NIL deals, and like you said, and Miami's really struck. Miami will forever be and giving Manny credit, forever be the home and the starting point for the transfer portal. I mean, they're the ones that really tapped into it first, and now everybody else is getting into it. Now, NIL deal wise, I mean, in all sports, you look at basketball, women's basketball with the Cavender twins, and, things like that, where you're marketing. Now you're using your savvy to market, the programs. And I think that's going to be, I mean, there's a lot of schools that don't want to touch it. But Mario believes that, listen, if it's not going to, if it's illegal, then they'll take it away. And that's what I think Nick Saban's point was about Jimbo Fisher, is that he perceives what's going on as illegal because you're using the NIL deal as a recruiting tool, which it never was designed to be. That's the whole thing. And that's what I think angered Nick Saban the most, that he didn't go about it the right way.
Like he's not doing it also. Come on.
No, I understand. Yeah. Well, especially because his quarterback's making more than him.
He's just mad because it's leveling the playing field a little bit. Because now everybody's got some money. And, nobody can afford everybody. And, the talent's going to get spread out a little bit more. That's why Nick Saban is panicking. But so Miami is in it with those guys. Way too soon to make any predictions on what's going to happen there. They're competing with Georgia, really for both of those guys. And it'll be interesting to see if they can win out in the end. Larry, I want to ask you about Stanquan Clark. He was at Killian. We talked about him the last time we did one of these segments, and you liked him and thought he was a good prospect. Miami decided not to offer him when he was at Killian. He transfers to Miami Central, apparently is blossoming over there, and now Miami is back on Stanquan Clark. Your thoughts on what exactly is going on with him? I assume you've seen him at Central, and tell us, how you think he's improved. And what you're seeing just in that whole Stanquan Clark linebacker situation.
I think Stanquan Clark's the best linebacker in the state. There's not any question. Remember, he was a safety. Derek Gibson, one of the best safeties to come out of Dade County, who went to Killian, went on to FSU and played a little bit with the Raiders in the NFL, was his coach in high school. He's the one that took him from that safety position. But even though he played safety and played the linebacker, he plays the linebacker position like a safety. So he'll hit you like a truck, but he's more agile to cover. He's a guy that is a good run stopper. Yeah, he's a different level guy. I mean, you could see, and not to throw any shade at anybody, but when Bobby Washington and he played side by side in the spring game, when they played, I believe, I forgot, but we were there for their spring game. You could see his reaction, his athleticism, and Bobby's come a long way. So I don't want to throw the shade on him.
That's been my observation. That he is improving and has come. A long way. Very
physical guy, big kid, runs well. But Stan Clark's got that it factor. I mean, he's just got, because he played the safety position basically all his high school career. So he could read and react. Sometimes linebackers, are so into that, that front seven mentality that's what they do. But he could read plays a lot better than anybody. He's physical. He's long. He'll make plays. I watched him during the Dillard game a week ago when the Central beat them to a pulp, and he was in on every damn play because of the fact because he could read. He saw, Chris Johnson got one play, but he's going to do that against everybody. He did against Chaminade. But yeah, no, this kid's whole different level kid. I would, and the whole thing is Charlie Strong and I sat together or stood together at that jamboree back in May at Palm Beach Gardens. And we talked for like 25, 30 minutes about that very thing that you and I are discussing, because I said, look at this guy has 11 tackles in 2 halves, a fumble recovery, a strip sack for a touchdown, and a strip sack. You walk away, and this guy fills up the stat sheet like you've never seen before. It's sort of like the kid that Miami has, a Flag. Everybody always wants to put him back down, but look at the end of the game. The guy's a leading tackler. He's always around the ball. So it doesn't matter to me what you look like. It's the productivity. I mean, because you have a lot of
too. I mean, I think that they want to they obviously need to and want to upgrade the level of talent on the roster.
He makes Miami better. You're quite, because I know that that's a good barometer to go by, and I know you like to use that as a measuring stick.
Yeah.
But yeah, Stanquan Clark
makes Miami better.
Yes, he does.
Do you think he'll want to stay home?
Miami got in late on him, and then some of these kids, when they're younger, they have that,
little chip on their shoulder.
The heck with them. They're using me as an afterthought.
Right.
But that's going to be all on Charlie Strong to make him say, listen, I wasn't here before. Okay. I wasn't here.
I need to evaluate you. Right.
Yeah. When they recruited, I'm here now. And from the day that
I was just going to say, the days of just taking everybody are over. Like they can't do that anymore. That's not working.
No, it's not working at all, because as you mentioned, they have 6, 7, maybe 8 kids, maybe even more, that were coveted recruits, but they were just other guys. They weren't
guys, and they're all going to end up in the transfer portal.
No doubt. Mark Pope's a great example of, we got to get Mark Pope. We got to get him. He could do this and that, but Mark Pope's at Jackson State, and he almost left there. So you make decisions when you're a team that's 5-5 that you wouldn't make when you're 9-2. So, or 8-2. So that's what I'm trying to say. Miami's recruiting has gone up several pegs, and they have to act accordingly. Like I remember that movie when the guy said, well, you got a BMW, drive like you do, and that's what I buy into. If you have all these studs, play like you have these studs. And, evidently Miami hasn't been able to do that, but I think they will because of this class that's coming in. That's going to turn, I think it turns the tide, because you're going to see a lot more positives happen, because this coaching staff will not stand for crap or mediocrity. They just won't. It's just, you look.
Somebody was talking to me about this game on Saturday against North Carolina. Like, that's the damn Super Bowl for this program. And if somebody's gonna show up and not ready to play in that game,
I don't. Again, Gary, I'm not judging 2022 on what the future is going to be.
No, but in terms of this season,
well, we'll see.
This North Carolina game Saturday coming off.
North Carolina is a team that can play. I watched the game yesterday against Virginia Tech.
They have a very good offense. Their defense is terrible. They can't stop. If you thought that Middle Tennessee State was doing what they want, wait till you see this team. Listen, the Miami defense has to show up, Larry. They got to show up this time.
They definitely got to play.
But it's going to be interesting. But it's a slippery slope. You want to center your recruiting efforts around South Florida. You want to get the best kids in Dade and Broward and Palm Beach. But I think it's obvious, and all you got to do is look at the last decade. They need to be a little more selective too. And I'm not bothered by taking an extra couple months to evaluate Stanquan Clark and make sure that he is a guy that is going to take you to another level. So that you're not sitting there with a situation where you've just taken all these guys based on their high school reputation and you haven't done proper evaluation. And now you've got a mess on your hands because you got all these local kids that aren't playing or aren't playing well. They're all going to end up having to go to the transfer portal. And it's not what you want. Like, that's not what you want. So it'll be tricky to watch, because obviously you do want to get Brandon Ennis. If you could flip Mark Fletcher, you do want to get Mark Fletcher. You do want to get Chris Johnson, and on and on and on. So it's a very tricky thing to me that they're managing down there right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Which leads me to my final couple guys I want to ask you about. These are two defensive backs that I do think will end up in this class, Larry. Damari Brown, Edwin Joseph. Do they take it to the next level?
Well, let's talk about Damari Joseph. As a guy I got a chance to watch, Damari Brown. I watched him over the weekend, and big time kid. He's very, very physical. He's quick. He's got long arms. He covers extremely well. He's a dude. He's a guy. You're right. He comes in here within a year or so. He's going to be pushing some junior, senior for playing time, and then he'll knock that door in, and then he'll be your guy for 3 years. So yeah, he's a get. He's a must get, and I think Miami's getting closer to it because I think he understands that he could be the guy. But he goes to another school and he may not be the guy right away, and that makes a difference to the kids. And he seems comfortable with a lot of the guys, and he's being recruited pretty heavily. You look at Miami's secondary coaches now. They're as good as you get. They know what they're doing. They're proven. So yeah, Edwin Joseph's a whole different ballgame. I can tell you right now, he's the MVP in South Florida right now. Not even close. It's not even close. This guy plays 55 plays a game. Not only a tremendous wide receiver and a dependable wide receiver, but you give him assignments like covering Brandon Innes and the top guys that every other team has because he's a shutdown guy. He's a leader. The kids follow him. He, to me, is such a must get. And I've talked to him so many darn times. He was so overlooked. Nobody even really
brought him up. How is he still overlooked?
It's just, how can you overlook a guy who single-handedly brought them back against Dillard. He single-handedly won that game against American Heritage with 3 catches that were amazing, knockdowns, covering one of the best receivers in the nation, and also recovering an onside kick at the end of the game that could have turned the tide. And everybody loves him. Everybody who you talk to, anybody from any team, his team, and they go, oh, yeah, he's a great guy. And that's what you need. You need a guy. Ivy was a lot like that coming out of high school. A guy who could do a lot, and he was friendly. But Ivy wasn't the greatest of great football players. See, Edwin is. Edwin is one of those guys that has he's the type of guy that he'll be waiting to go in a game, and he'll see somebody needs help with their shoulder pads, and he'll go help them. And he'll see that, they're having trouble opening the water jugs, and he'll go over there and see. You can't teach that. You just, his family is just awesome. They brought him up great. His mom is such a gem. I got a chance to talk to her a lot, and yeah, he's my MVP. Somebody asked me who would be the MVP for South Florida. I said, it's him going away. He may not have the stats, that a lot of these guys have, but you don't need stats when your productivity, helps teams win. You could have 70 catches for 1,000 yards, but your team could be 2-7, right. So, but he's got an undefeated team, arguably one of the best in the country, maybe top 6-7 in the country now. They may be the number 1 team in the nation next year because other than him and a couple of other guys, they bring back everybody intact. But yeah, Edwin's a whole different deal. Miami needs to just make it happen soon because he gets aboard.
They're trying to lock that up very soon, so we'll see.
I agree.
We'll see what happens there. Well, Larry, we turned ourselves on. It's an hour later, so but always such a pleasure to talk to you and
you too.
Get your thoughts on what's going on locally, and sure we'll do it again in December. But I can't thank you enough for joining me today on Good Morning CaneSport. And like I said, on the website today, we've got a recap where recruiting stands right now heading into the month of October. So make sure you check that out today. Larry, thank you so much. And
anytime, Gary.
We'll talk
thank
to you.
Soon. Yeah. Bye.
It's always great to talk recruiting and South Florida high school football with Larry Blustein. He's a guy that just devotes so much of his life to getting around to all the schools and seeing all the kids, and is such an advocate for the young players in the area. So we thank Larry so much for joining us today. We've got a few other stories on the website today, but first, let's hear from our friends at LifeWallet.
We here at LifeWallet take security very seriously. Our data security team is working constantly to make sure that your data is not accessed by anybody who you don't authorize.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah, I'm
Excuse me, sir. Thank you.
I have from CC, and he's thinking about it, and I'll be talking to CC. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
We use leading technology standards like biometric data to make sure that only you have access to your data and your identity is protected. LifeWallet gives you access to your entire medical history and information at the touch of your finger, so that it can save you time and can save your life.
Data transfer complete.
All right, a few other stories that are on the website this morning. For starters, I wrote a column. It actually was placed on the site yesterday, taking a look at the quarterback. I don't want to call it a controversy because it's not really a controversy yet, but obviously the play of Tyler Van Dyke, the start to the season, the offensive struggles have all been hot topics for everybody. And I wrote a column basically saying that be careful. It's hard to develop a franchise quarterback. And Tyler Van Dyke, by people outside of the program and outside of South Florida, is universally considered the best physical talent that Miami's had at quarterback, going all the way back to Vinny Testaverde back in 1987. So, my feeling is that, everyone's angry about the loss last week. No, Tyler did not play well. Yes, a lot of what's been going on clearly has gotten into his head, and he needs to get it together. But you don't just give up on a talent like this. You give him an opportunity, in my opinion, to get it together. And that's what I think is going on here. I think this open week came at a perfect time. It's given them a chance to kind of hit the reset button, get back to basics, maybe refine the offense a little bit, narrow it down to what they're doing well, and come out against North Carolina and put their best foot forward. Because this is not a game that you just say, "Oh, geez, we're not going to win. We don't have a shot," because North Carolina can put up points. I mean, absolutely not. Like, the Miami defense needs to show up and needs to be able to stop them, and the Miami offense needs to be able to move the football and score points. And they'll have had 2 weeks to get ready. And I think that this is another all-in football game for Miami, very similar to what we saw when they went to Texas A&M. And I'll be very disappointed if they come out and give anything but that kind of effort that we saw at College Station. They shot themselves in the foot. They didn't win the game, but you can't say that Miami didn't bring it to College Station. I expect them to bring it to Hard Rock Stadium this weekend. So I took a look at the quarterback situation. If you have not read that column yet, I urge you to take a look. It might at least, no matter where you line up on this whole thing, and I know there's a lot of guys out there that were enamored by those few plays they saw of Jake Garcia the other day and want to change quarterbacks already. I will be very surprised if Mario Cristobal does that. So I try to put it all in perspective for you. I showed you a couple examples of quarterbacks that were run out of their towns because things didn't go perfect, who are now kicking butt at their new destination. So the last thing I think you want to see is guys that are Miami Hurricanes now, going somewhere else and being superstars. So, let it run its course. Let these guys compete. Let them do their thing. Jake Garcia is doing very well and is going to be a very good quarterback. I hope he sticks it out here because I think he will be a very good quarterback if he does. How this all plays out this year, may or may not be a factor in that. It may or may not be a factor in what Tyler Van Dyke does after this year. We don't know any of this right now. But I urge everybody, be supportive of, I'll say, whatever quarterback is on the field on Saturday, whichever way that Mario Cristobal goes with this. Don't come to the stadium looking to boo these kids. I mean, they're both very good players. They both need to be pivotal members of this program. No point in soiling their existence here with boos. That's just my opinion. So hopefully they come out Saturday, they play a good game, and there's no reason to boo. We have an update today on Georgia linebacker recruit Marcellus Pulliam. He's a key target for Miami. He'll take an official visit to this weekend for the North Carolina game. We also took a look at Jacksonville defensive tackle target Jordan Hall's recruitment through the eyes of his coach to get a little bit of a different perspective. So make sure you check that one out. We had an update on defensive tackle prospect Terry Simmons. He's a Duke commitment, but he will take a Miami official visit, and we take a look at where things stand with him. We talked to tight end commits Jackson Carver, Reed McKeska, discussing how their high school seasons are going, their thoughts on where things are at Miami and how solid their commitments are. We catch up with 2024 Georgia linebacker Sammy Brown. He's got top programs all around the nation after him. Miami's trying to make some early headway. He shares his thoughts. From over the weekend, we had a question and answer session. Me and the fans talking about a wide variety of subjects, covered a lot of ground in that. I urge you guys to take a look at that. So that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. I thank you so much for starting out your day with us once again. Hope you enjoyed that segment with Larry Blustein. We will have a lot of coverage on the team on the website today. We'll be talking to Mario Cristobal a few times. We'll be talking to both coordinators for the first time since the Middle Tennessee State loss. It's going to be very interesting to see their viewpoints, what they have to say about the state of the team moving forward to North Carolina. So make sure you're on the website around midday today, and we will have all that coming at you. So everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next time.